Hey, welcome to The Explainer. This is where we take a look at complex issues and break them down by going straight to the source material. So, what happens when everyday citizens actually beat City Hall? Well, in Greeley, Colorado, that's exactly what happened. Residents organized and they won a huge battle against a billion-dollar development. But you know what? The story didn't end there. It's like a classic David and Goliath story, but what happens after David wins? That's often the most fascinating part.
Take a look at these results. In a special election, more than 54% of voters said no to the city-backed plan. And look, this wasn't a squeaker. It was a decisive repeal of the zoning that made the whole thing possible. A really clear victory for the grassroots opposition.
But then, just weeks after all those votes were counted, the city council does something kind of surprising. They announced they're creating something called the West Greeley Citizen Oversight Committee. And that, right there, raises the big question we're looking at today. Why would you form a committee to review a project that the people have already voted down?
All right, so let's dig in here. To really get what's going on, we first have to understand what was at stake. And believe me, this wasn't just some run-of-the-mill development. It was a massive, city-defining proposal.
Okay, so the city called it the Catalyst Project. They pitched it as this visionary investment, right? The big idea was to turn Greeley into a major destination. And they said it would all be funded by tourism revenue. You know, ticket sales, hotel stays, the whole shebang. And the best part? No new taxes.
But, and this is a big but, the funding was super controversial. The city wanted to use this tool called Certificates of Participation, or COPs for short. Now what COPs do, essentially, is they let a city take on long-term debt without getting direct approval from voters. That's a big deal in Colorado because of the Taxpayer's Bill of Rights. So it's basically a financial workaround, and it became a huge point of conflict.
And this slide just lays out the core conflict perfectly. On one side, you've got the city, seeing this self-funding economic engine. But on the other, you have a citizens group, Greeley Demands Better, and they saw something completely different. They saw a deal that piled all the risk onto the taxpayers. They were pointing out that 46 city buildings, we're talking City Hall, the police station, were being put up as collateral. That's a huge deal.
So you can imagine, this wasn't just some quiet disagreement happening in council meetings. Oh no, it spilled out and became a full-blown citizen-led movement. You had this nonpartisan coalition of residents, and they went out and collected nearly 9,000 signatures. That was enough to force the issue to put the project's zoning ordinance on the ballot for a citywide vote on the whole deal.
And get this, almost 21,000 people voted in this special election. Now, to put that into perspective for you, turnout for these kinds of things is usually, maybe 5 to 30%. So this was an absolutely huge turnout. It just goes to show how much this issue really, truly mattered to people in Greeley.
And for the people who opposed the project, this vote was a clear message, a mandate. The co-chair of the group, Rhonda Solis, put it really well. She said their goal was never to be anti-growth. It was about stopping what they saw as a really bad, fiscally irresponsible deal that basically benefited a private developer at the public's expense.
Okay, so let's shift gears to the council's response, because this is where things get really interesting. We're going to see how this committee idea builds into a pretty sophisticated political strategy. You see, creating a committee after the people have already voted no, that's where the real political game begins.
So, publicly, Mayor Dale Hall framed it as a direct response to the voters. He said things like, "We've heard you," and that this was all about being more transparent. The official line was that it was a way to, and I'm quoting here, take a step back, do our due diligence, and determine the best path forward.
But if you dig a little deeper, you start to see several, let's call them strategic benefits for the city council. This wasn't just about listening. The way this committee is structured gives them at least 4 distinct political advantages that, well, could help them get what they wanted in the first place.
First up, that 6-month term. That's not an accident. It creates a really critical cooling-off period. Think about it. The intense emotional energy that fueled that no campaign, that's really hard to keep up. This delay pushes any new decision way past the peak of public anger. It lets all that grassroots energy just kind of fade away.
Number 2, it lets the city control the narrative. See, the city staff, they're the ones providing all the support, all the information. They are the gatekeepers of the data the committee sees. And what does that do? It lets them reframe the project's benefits, not as some top-down plan, but as a conclusion that was, discovered by this neutral community-led committee.
And here's something really crucial. It's not just about what's happening inside those committee meetings.
While this group is busy deliberating for 6 months, the City Council is not just sitting on its hands. They're making other moves that could have a huge impact on the final outcome.
They're creating what you might call facts on the ground. For instance, they're pushing ahead to finish a $17 million water line. What that does is it makes the area physically ready for big development, no matter what the committee ends up saying. On top of that, they also get to appoint a replacement for a vacant council seat, which lets them shore up their pro-growth majority before any new vote might happen.
And you know what? This isn't the first time we've seen a strategy like this. If you look back at the Terry Ranch Water Project controversy, you see a really similar pattern. Back then, public worries about water safety got channeled into a long, technical review by so-called experts. This time, financial worries are being channeled into a citizen oversight committee. It's basically the same playbook, just updated for a new problem.
So where does this all lead? What is the real purpose of this 6-month committee?
Well, you can really look at it in two very different ways. On one hand, is this a genuine effort to build consensus? A real attempt to engage the public and find a better path forward? Or is it a strategic move designed to co-opt the opposition, a way to soak up all their energy, quiet the dissent, and in the end, bring back the very same project, just with a new, shiny, community-approved sticker on it?
The answer to that question is going to shape the future of West Greeley for sure. But more importantly, it brings up a really fundamental question for any city anywhere. At what point does a process that's supposed to be about public engagement actually turn into a tool of political strategy? That right there is the billion-dollar question that the people of Greeley are going to have to answer.